Hi, it's Michelle, and I haven't made a video since late May, early June. So I'm here today to give you kind of an update on what I've done with my summer since I made that video in the beginning of the summer about how I wasn't going to get an internship or a job because I was going to focus on my own projects, personal learning that I wanted to do, and I wanted to dedicate the majority of my time to that. This is just to kind of circle back and see like how things ended up working out and not working out and the reasons for that. Rewind back to May. So May I made those two videos and I was just feeling really productive that entire month actually. I was painting almost every single day. And this new painting series that I actually just finished today, I did the majority of that during the month of May. And I also put together some of my old work as well as some writing pieces. They'll be linked below. You can also explore the rest of my portfolio slash website through the link to see what I created. So then we got to the end of that month, and that's where everything went off course. The protests blew up at the end of May, beginning of June, in response to the murder of George Floyd and then the murder of Breonna Taylor. I made a video about that, explaining to especially non-Americans how American racism works. So when I made that video, that was just the beginning of this massive movement that would follow. And to see actual dialogue happening online, people who I remember being kind of like problematic in the reviews from like my high school, actually engaging with content about how to themselves become anti-racist. Almost everybody on my feed sharing links to donate to different causes. It was just honestly amazing. But it was also very emotionally taxing because I was just really involved in that online space of discussion and activism, engaging with those resources about how to be more anti-racist, about defunding the police and abolition, the ins and out of the prison industrial complex system, and then also having lots of conversations with friends, especially friends from Minerva who have a very different perspective because most of them are not American on what's happening. As you know, the protests weren't just in the US, it became a global thing, and it was just really fascinating to see how that played out everywhere. So that kind of consumed my life as soon as that started happening. I went to one of the protests in Boston. I had to quarantine afterwards. That's the only way my parents were gonna let me go. And then shortly after I finished that quarantine, I had already contacted a farm through woofing, which is like this farm work exchange thing. It was something I have done in France and I wanted to do it around where I live in the Northeast this summer. So I'd already contacted the farm about arriving mid-June. So in the midst of all this happening, I abruptly like cut everything off and drove off to Vermont where there was no service and like no Wi-Fi in the house where I was staying. It was just like kind of jarring all of a sudden to go from like being really active and present in this online space to like, whoop, isolation. And I really struggled with feeling like, like, am I doing the right thing? On one hand, going to the farm to try to learn about a more sustainable lifestyle and how to kind of live more independently of these harmful systems in our society, such as the industrial food complex and this whole, 9-to-5 hustle that you have to do in order to just sustain yourself. I was really curious about alternatives to that. And I was like, okay, me going to this farm is doing what I had planned to do, but at the same time, I feel like I'm sticking with plans instead of responding to new things that are coming up, such as the protests and this whole movement in the US and beyond. Am I not being adaptable enough? Yeah, I was just a bit conflicted. But all in all, it was a really great experience at the farm. I learned a ton. My hosts are really cool. They're this like 30-something-year-old couple, and yeah, they just live like the coolest lifestyle, so connected with the land. I would say like 80% of the food that we consumed was directly produced like on their land. We planted it, we put the seeds in, we watered it, we maintained it, harvested it, like the whole process. It just felt really good to have food sovereignty like that. Of course they bought some of the things that they didn't grow, but they grew like a crap ton of stuff. They had eggs, chickens, goats, so fresh goat milk, that was awesome. And some of the things that you would need money to buy, like for example, a tractor and other farm equipment that they needed. The guy actually has this like silk screen printing studio where he prints shirts, and he bartered those shirts for the tractors he has, which is so cool. This idea of like not relying solely on the monetary system to sustain yourself or to get things that you need and want, and building out more robust systems to cover your needs. Like, I just thought that was so cool. I was like, wow, this isn't idealistic, and it is very practical and works great. They did also earn money though. They like have this Airbnb camping place, and yeah, it was really great for about 2 weeks, and then I had to leave the farm, even though I was planning on staying for a month and a half because there was a COVID scare. So what happened was I was the only woofer, the only volunteer there for like the first week and a half, and then this other girl came, and like the third day she was there, she got a call from her mom being like, your sister got COVID, and she was like, shit. So yeah, I was really sad. She had to leave, and I also had to leave because, you know, we had been living in the same house, and just to be safe, because our host didn't want to be those people in Vermont that brought the disease to the rest of the state. So unfortunately I had to come back, and I had to quarantine again for 2 weeks. About a month of my summer has been spent in this one room in my house. And yeah, that's when, I don't know, things started getting really difficult. I just like wasn't expecting to need to do it a second time, and I think that the isolation really just started getting to me by then because it was the second time I had done it, and like before that I was technically living by myself in Vermont, being the only volunteer. Yeah, even though like I saw people and interacted with people there quite a lot, it was like still living by myself. And I don't know, I just got quite depressed in quarantine the second time. And with the energy that I did have, I tried to continue interacting with this whole anti-racist movement that was happening largely online. I took a crash course on abolition and defunding the police. I started interacting with some working groups within Minerva, working to make Minerva more anti-racist. But most of my time I spent lying on my bed, just like staring at the ceiling. Yeah, which kind of gets me to why I haven't made a single video since my last one, like 2-3 months ago. The biggest reason is because I have been pretty low in energy for most of this summer. It's just been really emotionally draining, as I'm sure it's been for whoever you are watching this, and for like thousands of other people, probably millions, because, you know, the pandemic's still continuing. We thought it might be over by now, but no, it's still an issue, and lo and behold, masks are political now. There's an election coming up, the protests, and it's not like all bad either. Like, for example, with the protests, it meant that there was a lot of dialogue online. All of a sudden social media became this discussion space with resources, and every time I opened Instagram I'd be like learning something new. But all that just requires quite a lot of energy. It's just like rewiring your brain almost in terms of how you think about safety and justice, because ever since you're a kid you're like told, you know, safety means the cops, and, you know, justice means punishment, and to actively be like, no brain, that's wrong and problematic, it's just like, it takes a lot of energy. And then you're like, wow, the current society we lived in is messed up, and you're like, wow, that's sad. I just felt like because of everything that was happening, there was so much being said constantly. There was so much noise, you know, on Instagram everybody is saying something about what's happening on their story, or at least they were for like that period. On Medium, oh god, I had signed up for Medium because I thought I would write an article or two, maybe, like make that another platform that I create on. But then I was like, boy, like there's some good stuff on there, don't get me wrong, but it's just so much like personal opinion pieces. It feels like the entire thing is just a giant op-ed. And obviously in response to all the shit that's happening, people have so much to say. And I'm just like, oh, it just feels like all like noise at this point. And I was just exhausted by the flood of information and voices. And I was like, I don't need to add. My voice isn't really worthy of being heard in all of this, because like, what do I have to add that's different or that hasn't probably been said by someone else who's like more qualified? Yeah, so I didn't really produce anything then, and found myself listening more than talking, like taking in more than giving out, which I think is good, but definitely not what I expected. If we're talking about what are you gonna do with your summer if you're not gonna have a job, you're like, okay, well I'm gonna work on my own projects. That means I'm gonna produce things, right? Like in this society we value tangible things being produced, even if it's not like totally tangible, like a video or an article online. you know, things that have some sort of value like that. But we don't put the same amount of value on taking in as we do on putting out. So all this time I spent listening to these new perspectives, going to a crap ton of webinars, and then digging deeper to think like, all right, how does all this have roots to colonialism actually, and how do I decolonize my mind? Exploring indigenous worldviews of how our relationship with nature should be, and how that has to do with the climate crisis, just the whole Pandora's box of issues with this society. I've been learning so much this summer, but because I've spent so much of my energy absorbing things and taking things in, I don't have any energy left to output, and it seems like I'm not doing anything with myself. And I also feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything because I don't have anything tangible to show for it. And I really struggled with that for a bit, because even though I recognize that this thinking that society has, valuing talking more than listening, valuing the production of something more than learning and reflecting. Even though I know that that mentality is problematic, you still can't help but to be influenced by those narratives in society and be like, oh crap, I dedicated this summer to working on my own things, and like, what have I even created? I'm like still trying to like be okay with that and to accept that this is all part of the process, and that you can't output things when you don't listen, observe, and intake new perspectives. Like, the things that I make are gonna be worse if I'm always using the same old materials. Creation is about newness and seeing old things even from a new perspective, like pushing the limits of the mind, of imagination. So it's like, how can I do that if I am constantly just talking and not listening? So yeah, I think I do still see the time that I've spent this summer as really valuable. I'm not gonna say productive, because I've now taken issue with that word. Yeah, so that's what's been up with me. I hope your summer has also been a valuable experience for you. I hope you felt like you learned. I hope you felt like you grew. And with that, I will see you next video, and thanks for watching. Bye.